What's up, everyone? Welcome in to That's a Tap with DJ and CT. My guy, DJ, the King of Melbourne. How are you doing?
I mean, right back at you, King of Melbourne. I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Yeah, feeling good, doing well. It's been a little break after such a high ride from the last two pay-per-views and what's been happening in the boxing world and our
Yeah,
recent interview. But yeah, look
yeah,
forward to talking about 301, right? Life after 300. Bit of a
yeah,
hangover, hey?
yeah. Absolutely, man. Like a few months ago, like we were all like leading up towards that UFC 300, that big event. Looking forward to what it may be. There was a lot of mystery around the main event, and then eventually it unfolded. And obviously, we'll talk a little bit about how that main event affected UFC Rio or UFC 301. But yeah, look, there is a huge hangover if you ask me. Like obviously, it's a card that'll be very hard to be topped, and it's sort of like it peaked at UFC 300. I mean, if you saw the card starting from January, like we had a decent card, and then sort of it started upping the quality of the card with the Feb one, 298, 299 in Miami, and then we got the big 300, which delivered in spades, and we spoke about that in our UFC 300 event, and now we're here, UFC 301, and sort of we spoke off air, it kind of creeped up on us. We obviously had a Apex card last week. Look, to be very fair, respect to all the fighters who took part in that card, obviously. But after that UFC 300, like sort of, it was a big sort of dip. Um, and look, let's be honest. While UFC 301 is loaded with some local talent happening in Rio, a really good main event, a great champion in Alessandro Pantoja. We got our very own Steve Erceg from Perth, challenging for the title. And yeah, man, look, it's a good card, obviously, but probably out of the last, I guess, five, it'll be like bottom two or bottom one in terms of strength on paper. But we know this, man. We know we've known this in the past. A weak card on paper doesn't necessarily mean it translates to the performance. And also, by no means is this a weak card at all. Obviously not to the standards of what we've seen in 298, 299, and 300. So yeah, here we go. We're here, and look, I'm sure like the card will deliver. Like, the fighters are going to bring it. The atmosphere is going to play a huge part. Pay attention to the local talent who'd want to show up and show out in front of their hometown crowd.
Yeah, 100%, man. Still, I mean, nothing can top 300 from that lineup, 299, but glad to be back in Brazil because I was just saying to you before coming on, they always deliver, they produce, championship talent. Great to see the King of Rio back
Yeah, yeah,
for this event. The UFC is obviously, better with Jose Aldo in the UFC, but we understand he retired, but took up this opportunity. I'd love to hear your thoughts on him, yeah, coming back. Whether you
yeah.
think it's a great thing for this card, but what else really stands out to you from the card before we talk about our predictions?
Man, the main event obviously is a big. I think that's just the crown jewel of this card is the main event. I actually like Alessandro Pantoja as a champion. He's one of those fighters who's, for the longest of times was very unfortunate not to be challenging for the title, injuries, etc. And then if you look at the top 10, I mean, there's just a lot of chatter about Steve Erceg getting a shot at the title. But if you really look at the top 10 flyweights, right, this is a division that's sort of been cleared out by the champion. You got Brandon Royval, number one, who just lost to Pantoja. Brandon Moreno has lost to Pantoja three times, and Brandon Royval twice. Amir Abazi's, on the sidelines. Sky Kara-France also coming back from an injury. There's word that he's potentially going to fight Manel Cape in Perth. It'll be a great fight. Alex Perez, again, as a loss to the champion. Moment Rakaya was like a surprise. I mean, I was surprised that the opportunity wasn't given to him. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but he's probably the only one that stands out who potentially could have made a case against over Steve Erceg. But having said that, while Steve Erceg's only been in the UFC for a year, he's been on a run. He's undefeated in the UFC, and he's been finishing fights, man. So I think, look, to be honest, I actually understand, and I think it's fair for Steve Erceg to get this shot because he's sort of the next guy in line. I think it would have been between him and Muhammad Mokaev to to go for that title shot. And look, it's it's completely fair for him to get it. So I'm excited for that fight. I do think it is a tough fight for Steve Erceg, regardless, because Alessandro Pantoja is a legit champion. He's also one of those well-rounded fighters. He can understand the situation, adapt. He's got that great fight IQ that most of the UFC champions have, and then to be able to go in and implement game plans and make adjustments on the fly, whether it's keeping it standing or taking it to the ground, reading the fight. I think, yeah, look, he's a great champion, and extremely fair, extremely honest, man. Like I think Steve Erceg's got a legit shot at causing the upset as well. I'm keen to see what you think.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in our predictions coming up. I don't want to give away my
Yeah.
prediction, but Pantoja, the clear favorite, coming in, and I think he's done nothing to suggest that he won't take the victory. There's something to be said though for a guy who's been given a chance, maybe a little prematurely, nothing to lose, playing with house money. Um, I think that's a really going to be exciting fight. I think that will be fight of the night, to be honest. I think it'll be
Hmm.
closer than people think.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Paul Craig. I want to see what he does. Look forward to that. Lionheart Smith. Love to see who you predict in that one. I think that could
Yeah.
be a sneaky one for fight or performance of the night.
Yeah.
Michel Pereira, always exciting, has you on the edge of your
Entertaining.
seat, entertaining. Look forward to seeing what he does in Rio, and of course, Jose Aldo, great. I think it's a great thing to have him on this card. I think moving forward, though, I think the intentions of him in retirement are quite fair. I think that was the
Yeah.
right call to hang them up. But I think having him for this card is cool.
Yeah.
And then what
It
else stands out?
Man, obviously, like I want to talk a little bit about this Jose Aldo situation. Obviously, it adds value to the card. Having a legend, having a superstar like Jose Aldo, who was the longest reigning featherweight champion across two different organizations, to be on the run that he was, and obviously for for better or worse, also remembered for that iconic build up and fight against Conor McGregor. And great fighter, a legend of the sport. So bringing him back obviously adds value to the pay per view, but also to the local audience to be able to see a local legend. Fighting in front of them, and the opportunity to see him fight live obviously adds value. I think it'll be interesting, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this. Like we all know, the original plan was for Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill to be uh, for UFC 301 Rio, and then the core main was going to be Topuria, defending his belt at the time. Obviously, they hadn't zeroed in on an opponent for him yet. We all know what happened with UFC 300, and then UFC found themselves needing to, elevate that card and have that, standout main event, which eventually, we were extremely thankful because, we got so many iconic moments in that card, and one of them is that main event and that finishing sequence by Alex Pereira. It just adds to that card, adds value to that card. So I'm extremely glad they did that. But obviously, when what it did was it impacted UFC 301. So I think if that fight hadn't moved, if that fight hadn't moved, and if it did remain in UFC 301, do you think they would have still brought Jose Aldo back?
Man, great question. I think probably no. There's probably a great chance he's not brought back. However, having said that, the UFC has always been an organization that does extend that branch to those that may want to still come back. As in the doors never closed, and we might see Amanda Nunes later,
Hmm.
in the track if the storyline suits the narrative.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. But yeah, I think it's more gimmick than not. I think with all respect to what he's achieved and
Yeah.
what he's capable of doing. I think it was more of a sentiment, homecoming, boosting this card a bit more as well. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Like, I mean, he got inducted into the Hall of Fame last year, 2023. Yes, last year. And for me, to it was, I just was not expecting that at all because we don't know what he has been doing. We haven't really seen him training intensively as an active athlete. He's been out of the game, and once usually, very rarely do you see Hall of Fame fighters in the UFC inducted into the Hall of Fame and then come back and fight. We've seen Hall of Fame fights, right, and then the fighters continue. Obviously, that's a different scenario to a Hall of Fame fighter. Usually, you get inducted into the Hall of Fame because you've accomplished and you've completed your career. It kind of switches you off mentally as well, I would like to think. So, yeah, look, I think I'm keen to see what sort of Jose Aldo turns up. Obviously the name is there, and he's a legend, and what he accomplished will always be there, and that will always continue as well. Like the fighter he was will still remain in the Jose Aldo we will see this weekend. However, like sort of the mentality and the mindset where it's at, it will be very interesting to see, and that sort of played a big factor in my prediction, to be honest. And I'll look keen to explain it a little bit more when we come to that as well. But hey, look, one thing I read, and this is very interesting. So originally, the plan was for Jose Aldo to be fighting Dominic Cruz, right? That would have been a legend versus legend fight. Um, you know, uh, obviously makes a lot of sense. Dominic Cruz coming off of a loss. Obviously, we can all agree that Dominic Cruz, for the legend he is the end of his career, fighting career. And then we've got Jose Aldo, obviously returning from a retirement. Yeah, let's not forget he was retired as well. So he's coming back from retirement. I think that would have been an ideal fight, to be honest. And then for some reason that fell through, and the next guy they were able to get was Jonathan Martinez, who's an extremely ferocious fighter. If you look at his fights, he fights with a lot of ferocity, tenacity, and always steps forward, continuously pressuring. So yeah, look, it's a tough fight, I think, for Jose Aldo, in my personal opinion, especially coming off of that layoff, or having retired and then having to come back. And how much notice did he get? Like, sort of got announced at the same time the UFC 300 main event got announced. So I don't know how much notice Jose Aldo was given as well. And the funny thing was how Jonathan Martinez reacted when he got the call, or he was told, you're fighting Aldo. It's like, who's Aldo? Because he could not even think that this is the Jose Aldo who's coming back. He thought some up and comer because obviously he's retired. So that kind of tells the story as well. But yeah, man, look, am I excited to see him fight again? Am I excited to see him in a card? Am I excited to see him make that walk and potentially get a win and jump into that UFC Rio crowd? Yeah, man, absolutely. Because I think, you know, he's one of those guys who does, deserve to go off on a high, go off on a win. So let's see. And look, we never know. Even if he gets a win here, so he might be like, oh, you know what? I look good. Let me stay on. Let me try and see if I can do another title run. I don't know. So yeah, it'll be fun to see.
Yeah, I'll be keen to get your predictions as I'll bring them up. I'll bring yours up
Yeah.
first, but I think do you are you worried with how the fight could end? In terms of how his last fight could be. You always worried about that factor?
Yeah, I mean, especially like I said, he's clearly past his prime, and he's being retired, Hall of Fame, all of that. It mentally switches you off as a fighter, and we know in this fight business it's a very unforgiving sport. Right? You need to have that hunger, you need to have that desire to go in and fight, and sort of, not saying that he doesn't have it, but you get what I mean. When you're inducted into the Hall of Fame and when you're retired, I think you mentally switch off, and you start focusing on your family. You start focusing on life outside of the fight business. So I'm also interested to see how much remuneration he was offered to
Yeah, that's
to jump onto this card. Like, it's a big name, so they would have had to bring out their checkbooks. So yeah.
yeah, big factor as always. But yeah, you hit the money, and I think when you mentioned training before, that just kind of creeped into my head. Like, you know how serious you take it with your
Yeah,
training.
yeah,
Um, you know, some fighters, and to his credit, you know, maybe he stayed in shape and continued to train, you know, recreationally. A lot of
yeah,
fighters in retirement don't just quit cold turkey. You know,
yeah.
they continue to practice, train as well. But here we go, man. Talk me through your predictions now.
Right. So you guys can all see. Look, like I said again, man, a fight's a fight. Anything can happen, right? You can never. We sort of like say we can't predict the future. Like we just go based on sort of past performances, the information we have, and sort of how they perform. Um, so yeah, look, this is just my prediction. So and I wouldn't be surprised if any of these fights go the other way. Okay, so we've got Alexander Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. As much as it pains me to go against uh, Steve Erceg, one of the local talents, I feel like maybe it's a bit too soon to go against someone as big as um, Alexander Pantoja, who's a well-rounded, strong champion. So yeah, look, I've gone with Alexander Pantoja because of his well-rounded ability, and his ability to understand the fight, make adjustments. Like I said before, fight IQ, all of this. And I think, yeah, look, it's a tough task for Steve Erceg. But having said that, man, like, look, how many people picked Ryan Garcia to beat Devin Haney before the fight, and we all know how that went. This is a fight business, right? It's just how you turn up on that day. And Steve Erceg, go look at his fights. He's a finishing fight, steamrolling people. His combinations are, you know, a sight to behold. So look, anything can happen. It's just that I'm picking Pantoja just based on past performance and then his experience in these championship fights and experience in the UFC. Second fight, uh, Jonathan Martinez versus Jose Aldo. Again, same reason, man. Like I think I outlined that enough. Jonathan Martinez is still one of those young fighters who's trying to, make a name for himself. Get it, crack into that top 10. Potentially, I'm sure all these fighters they have that same goal of making a title run. Whereas Jose Aldo, where he is in his career at the moment, like having retired, you know, Hall of Famer. What's his mindset at the moment coming into this fight? I'm sure he doesn't want to come in and lose. It's not him just taking a paycheck and coming to lose. I'm sure he's coming to give his best. He'll give his best. And to answer your question, he is looking in extremely good shape. And if you look at the fight week media coverage, you can see he's in extremely good shape. So look, again, close fight. I'm just going based off the activity as well. Jonathan Martinez has been active. So I'm just going to give the edge to him. We got Michel Pereira, obviously going up against Poirier. There was a lot of changes. He originally was meant to fight Moradov. Fight got cancelled, and they got Poirier, who was meant to have another fight, and then they swapped that around for this. Don't know how much time he had to prepare. It's a tough stylistic fight for anyone. Michel Pereira, that is, like, the way he fights is very unorthodox, and I think it's quite exciting. It feeds off the energy of the crowd. I just feel like he's been pretty good, man. Like in the last fight was in a middleweight, and he performed really well. So I think I'm going to give him the momentum as well. It's a quick turnaround for him too, but it was a short fight. So yeah, we've got Michel Pereira, and then got Vitor Petrino versus Lionheart Smith. I just think, just again, it's always tough to pick against Lionheart Smith, given his experience. But again, the younger, fresher guy. I feel like I saw his last fight, and then, man, this guy is hungry and he's wanting to win, and he's quite resilient. Forward pressure. Uh, Again, sort of like very strong for that division. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Petrino, and then we've got Paul Craig versus Caio Barrio. Again, a middleweight fight. I think we saw how the Brandon Allen fight went, and I just feel like Paul Craig is extremely talented, but it's just that he takes a lot of damage trying to get into those positions where he can be successful, and I think that's where um, he's probably going to face a little bit of trouble, and that's probably what's going to cost him the fight. So I'm going to go with Barrio. That's my predictions. And again, hey, just gonna say, like, any of these fights could go anyway. I think most of these fights I'm less confident uh, with the picks, but maybe the Barrio Paul Craig, I'm a bit more confident than the other ones.
Yeah, hey, you got to go with your gut. Some fights you
Yeah,
feel a lot more confident, like you said, stronger about. But honestly, some of these are just a 50-50 flip, flip of a coin.
yeah,
Styles, make fights, and things are pretty even. As I'll flip over to my predictions now, and we differ on a couple, but
yeah,
we're the same for Pereira, um, yeah, and the other two, and then but the top, I'm going to say the King of Rio
yeah,
finds something in the tank, right? Just for the crowd,
yeah,
for the moment, and pulls off the upset to show that he's still, one of the goats.
yeah,
Um, but arguably, look, the biggest upset, I'm just going with Steven Erceg for the fact that I think we could see another like a Ilya Topuria, Leon Edwards, just a huge upset,
yeah,
you know, in that moment. I think nothing to lose going in. Um, he's going to throw caution to the wind, and I think he might catch him. I think Pantoja deserves to be favourite, like you said. I think he is fully got the track record, the experience, and all of that. But
yeah,
there's something dangerous about a fighter that is hungry. We don't know much about him, or maybe the
yeah,
opponent
yeah,
underestimates him. And
yeah.
I think Erceg will pull off the upset as well. What do you think?
Love it, man. Like, look, just for the record, your prediction for the main and core main is how I'd like for it to go. Right?
Oh,
That's my ideal scenario. I would love for Erceg to win that championship, for the King of Rio to bring back the old school memories of him running through opponents. So yeah, look, best case scenario, man. Like if your predictions were to come true, I'll be extremely happy. And you're right, like you're spot on as well. Like you know, some people could make the argument that Ilya Topuria, you know, uh, didn't have enough fights before he fought someone the caliber of Alexander Volkanovski, and we know how that fight went. So you never know. You know what I mean? Like all it takes is for you to be confident in yourself and your skills, and to be able. And look, again, looking at all these embedded episodes, Steve Erceg looks extremely confident. He's happy to be there. Big opportunity. I'm glad he took it. Right, regardless of the outcome, I think his name now gets out there. Uh, so yeah, man, pretty excited to see how this main event turns out.
apparently he's been going. I haven't seen the embedded, but that you just mentioned. Apparently he's been going crazy in those. What kind of things have you seen?
Oh man, like it's a pretty cordial at the moment between, and I think it'll stay that way between Pantoja and it's like they had this face off up on the Brazil Hill. You know, they had some funny exchanges. We spoke about their attires and sort of the height and all of that kind of things, and but mutual respect, a lot of that. But yeah, look, I think for Erceg, the biggest thing, and not just for Erceg, but anyone who's not a Brazilian fighting a Brazilian in Brazil, it's the hostility of the crowd. They're a very hostile crowd. Like obviously you got there's home fans. You see in the UK, Australia, Abu Dhabi, uh, Paris, all of these places, even in the US. But then there is the Brazilian fans and the Mexican fans, but they do get a little bit hostile. We've seen punch ons happening as well, right? So yeah, it's it'll be interesting how they negate that sort of being able to handle that hostility and be able to shut out that noise. I think that's where sort of championship and fight experience comes into play. Big fights, having that experience, the big fight experience, it plays a big part. I think Pantoja has been in that position before, where when he fought Brandon Moreno, I feel like he Brandon Moreno was more favored by the fans as opposed to Pantoja. So yeah,
Yeah, is there a result that you see more like happening more likely? Like, how do you feel the main and the co-main are going to go? Decision? Do you think finish?
interesting. Um, I'm gonna say decision on both ends. I think it's gonna be a decision on both ends. So yeah, I
I
can't.
think I could see the
Yeah.
Pereira being a finish, Paul Craig one being a
Oh, you
finish.
mean like the whole main card? I thought just the first two. Yeah, like the Pereira one could be a finish. Either he'll finish him or he'll get tired and get finished. You know what I mean? All the dancing. The Petrino one, usually I would have said, these are three rounders, right? Um, Last fight it went the distance when he in his last fight, Petrino went the distance. So um, and Kaya Baraya again, you know, went the distance. But like I said, Paul Craig takes a lot of damage, and that's his style, right? We see him in all the. He's the only guy to submit ankle live, man. Like, and he took a lot of damage, and then he finds himself in these situations. He's so good off his back, and he gets into these submission positions, and his offensive grappling, wins him fights. So maybe he'll find himself there. Like, yeah, that fight is a possibility where they could get a finish. Try to see who Petrino fought last. I think. Let me just have a look. Who did he fight? Let's
Yeah,
go
I could see
Petrino.
Pereira trying to get that bonus for sure and get the crowd juiced up as well.
Yeah,
This 50K is huge for a lot of these guys
absolutely.
that aren't on huge money.
No, and I don't know, like I don't think they'll up the bonus again. I think that was a one-off. I don't think Dana White's going to do that again. So
Yeah, 100%. Max Holloway is enjoying his 600K. That's like more than
and
what
that
some
was,
of these dudes make in a year.
that's his best case scenario, man. Like that's the absolute best case scenario. Like he's the one who called for it. Like he was calling for it from the get-go. He said like let's make it 300,000, and then to go in and get both. It's just yeah, he deserved it. Like in any normal circumstances, we could have said, hey, give him one, and why not, spread the love. But man, they deserved it. Like you can't argue against it. And he gave us like a moment that'll live in us forever. You know what I mean? Like not just that performance, but to that was fight of the night. Right? There were moments where Holloway was in a little bit of trouble, but also then that last 10 seconds, which I think I've still see videos popping up and people talking about the last 10 seconds. I've had people who do not follow the UFC or MMA come and talk about, the Max Holloway fight. Have you seen the Max Holloway fight? It's like, yes, brother, I've seen the Max Holloway fight. Of course, 100 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, that is about wrapping this one up. Look forward to the card. We'll obviously chop up our reaction to it like we do. Our monster reaction to
Yeah,
300 was big, but this is gonna the rest of the great cards are gonna start to creep up on us, man. DJ,
man.
Mac back, Poirier, Islam, lots of good
Hey,
things coming.
like I said, this is by no means a weak card at all. I know we're just comparing because coming off of 300, any card would have been a tough uh, task to match up with that card, and it's sort of the rise that the cards had. Like I said, from 298 to 300, that trifecta. Right. Having said that, man, look, even if you look at it as like a momentary stepping off the gas, I still think this card's going to deliver. And then, man, June is a huge month, huge month. So yeah, like we got Max Holloway back. We got Whitaker fighting. Man, there's a lot of things to look for. And like you pointed out, International Fight Week, we got Conor McGregor fighting as well. Is the return of the Mac that we've been awaiting for a very long time. The word is that we all gonna a big group of people. We're gonna all watch it together. So pretty excited for that and the fanfare that follows that. So yeah,
Yeah, and of course August. We're making plans, and at the moment we fully expect to be live in
yeah,
Perth for
absolutely, yeah,
UFC
yeah.
305, and we'll keep everybody up to date with that. But yeah, as you mentioned, positive news that we could potentially get a Kai Kara France Manuel cap for that.
Metal Cape, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think I'm fairly confident it has to be the Adesanya versus Duplessis fight. It's too big of a fight. Either it has to be in Africa or here. I don't see UFC South Africa happening soon or Africa happening soon. So I don't think they'll let that title, not be defended for that long. So I think, well, the next best thing is down on this end, right? So yeah, like all by all means, man. Like as much as I love that fight to happen here, I think that's a fight fitting to happen in Africa, not just because of, the background about the fighters, not just because of that, but also because of like the pre-fight antics we've seen so far. You know, Duplessis saying, who's the real African, all these kind of things. So yeah, look, I think it makes a lot of sense. So, but either way, like the plan is that we will be there in person, RAC Arena, isn't it? So, you were there already once, and we're ready to feel the electricity of the fans, and watch these fights live. It'll be a good main event. And yeah, man, look, what I want to quickly point out was Vitor Petrino actually fought Tyson Pedro in his last fight. That's how can I forget that? So obviously, he did have a pretty clear win over Tyson Pedro, and Tyson Pedro obviously retired, and now he's boxing. All the best to him. But yeah, and he had a good performance against Tyson. Man, Tyson Pedro has been on a tear recently. So he had a good performance, which again, is sort of what's making me pick him. But again, Anthony Smith's a crafty veteran, so be prepared for him to show some, pull out some tools from his toolkit, and then school the young guys.
Yeah, look out for the crowd, as you said. The theatrics are going to be there.
Yeah.
That might steal the show. Can you imagine what Jose Aldo's walkout is going to be like?
It's just going to be
It's
nuts.
going to
It's
be,
going to be nuts. And then if he were to pull out the win, man, I think that crowd's going to go bonkers. I think it's going to be electric. But look, excited, man. That's all I can say. I mean, excited. Like that's what I said. Like, don't sleep on this card. I know on paper it might not boast the fights that you've now been accustomed to, but look, sometimes these happen, and the performances stand out in these kind of instances. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And I think there's some really good up and coming talent to keep an eye on. There's so a lot to look forward to be honest.
yep, look forward to it, breaking it down with
Yep.
you. Just got to add as well, there has been a amendment to the graphic that we're seeing. There was one
Yeah.
fight that, right, there was amended since, right? So
Muradov, yeah, Muradov fight
disclaimer.
got cancelled, and then it's now Igor Poirier is replacing him. Yeah, man. Like, have you bought the pay per view yet?
No, no, not yet. But
Yeah,
I'm probably do it the day before, just to make
yeah,
sure there's no huge adjustments.
yeah,
But
yeah. Absolutely.
yeah.
I feel you. I feel it.
What about you?
Yeah, I've got ready to go. Fired up.
Always on, man. The King of Melbourne. This has
Yeah,
been a great episode of Breakdown 301. Look forward to
yep,
it. Yeah, a lot of fights. I like the Aldo one. Obviously, the main
yep,
event's the top of
yeah,
the pile for me.
yeah,
The Lionheart is going to be entertaining.
yeah,
Pereira, but yeah, weaker than a normal pay per view. But look, it's in between two really strong cards, so you
yeah.
do get that. You do get that. But yeah, DJ, any other thoughts before we wrap up?
No, look, that's it. That's it. Looking forward to it. Like you said, echoing your thoughts. And we'll obviously reconvene for the recap. Man, like I'm absolutely petrified because this is one of those cards I'm absolutely not sure about any most of my predictions. So let's see. Like the past two ones I've been somewhat or fairly confident, whereas these ones are like, it's just for some reason it's got this aura about it where you can't just pinpoint one fighter. Like all of them, they're all you know could pull out a win. So yeah, let's see.
Yep, definitely. That's why we love the sport, and yeah, I'm with you on that. I just went for the Flyers on a couple, and then we agreed on
Yeah,
the last three or the first three of the main event. But yeah, look forward to seeing who was right, who was wrong. Let us know in the comment section, guys, which fight you're looking forward to, and if you think there's going to be some upsets as well. And this one is a wrap. Peace.
it's all.